everyone. A very warm welcome to all the participants in today's webinar. This is our 56th webinar in our talk series. A very special welcome to our speaker, Dr. Asif Iqbal, for making the time to be with us here today. And before we introduce our speaker, and for those who were not here earlier and have joined us today, Rtambhara Wellness is a collective of like-minded individuals that look at wellness in a holistic way, not just the body, but the mind as well, and all through the practice of knowledge and wisdom that comes from our ancient Indian scriptures and heritage. We conduct corporate programs and retreats for wellness that look at personal transformation and tapping into oneself to unlock our infinite potential. Presently, we're conducting these programs virtually, and our virtual corporate programs are uploaded on our website, rtambharawellness.com. Do visit our website and go through the details of these programs. We also conduct webinars regularly on topics that delve into self-discovery, personal transformation, health, harmony, and holistic well-being, as well as the arts, which help connect us with our higher selves. All our earlier talks are uploaded on YouTube under Rtambhara Wellness. If you'd like to be part of our community, the details of where you can connect with us are posted on the chat. Alternately, please post your contact details, cell number, email ID, so we can add you to our groups. So let's get on with today's program, where Dr. Asif Ji will be talking to us on happiness and value-oriented diplomacy. It's a very interesting topic, so we look forward to that. Today's session will have 45 minutes of talk, followed by 15 minutes of Q&A. A request to all of you to stay muted through the talk and keep your videos on. And feel free to post your questions on the chat function, and Dr. Asif will answer your questions after the talk. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Asif Iqbal to you. Dr. Asif Iqbal is the president of the Indian Economic Trade Organization, a businessman hailing from Bangalore, India. He's an architect by profession, and as the president of the ITO, travels with various customized delegations to bridge the academic gap between industry and academia. He served as the honorary counsel for the Republic of Suriname, a country in Latin America that has close relations with India. Asif Iqbal Ji has been bestowed by a doctorate from the University of Jerusalem in social behavior management and is a keynote speaker at various academic conferences and international summits. Mr. Iqbal is responsible for advising various international clients that need to make key decisions that involve a huge diversity of issues, from budgetary choices to communication ones, from organizational engineering to productivity issues. He has the experience of dealing with a broad range of stakeholders, both at the internal and external fronts: donors, policymakers, media, private sector, and the industry. Having the right balance between academic knowledge and management capacities, he has the skills that are most appropriate for leading an international think tank. So welcome to you, Dr. Asif, and we look forward to your talk today. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Bina ji. Thank you, Rtambhara. And I really would like to acknowledge the efforts taken by Rtambhara in during this time of COVID and social distancing and all sorts of negativity. Rtambhara has been a great platform for people to come together to get a holistic satisfaction of what they would like to, what they're missing in conventional part of their daily lives. So it is really a wonderful gesture on your part to have invited me. And choosing the subject of value-based diplomacy and happiness is very, very apt again. Happiness, what we are speaking, is a very abstract term in many ways for a lot of people. But for some people, happiness is, for a father, happiness is something to keep his children happy. For a child, happiness is playing a video game. For a mother, happiness is looking at the newborn baby. For a sister, it's different definition. For a brother, it's a different definition. So happiness does not have a generic definition. So it's a very strange and a very superficial thing that we all have defined happiness. Overall, we have to see that it is a beautiful combination of joy and pleasure. So that gives way to peace, and it is a subjective feeling. But today's world is giving it an objective meaning. So in our daily lives, we see how we are associating our happiness with wealth, bank balance, property, gold, and many other materialistic things. But the basic formula of happiness lies in the forgotten pleasures, the pleasures which we once cherished by our elders, are still the true source of happiness. What we used to do when we were children, and what is relating to us when we were small, is what relates to the real source of our happiness. We can still recall when we meet our families and brothers and sisters, what happiness to us was the past, and that was the source of happiness for us. Unfortunately, with this modern life and modern lifestyle, we are forgetting all this. And our deeply divided society, which is already there now, it has to be patched with peaceful reconciliatory and diplomatic means, like education, awareness, social safety net. And Rtambhara is doing a part of the education transfer and bringing in the awareness to somehow help people to feel socially secure on this particular lines. Now, happiness concerning diplomacy is something that I would be glad to note, and I've made some few points today to talk in this webinar. How Mark Twain had defined happiness, according to him, how he defined India. And I'm here talking mostly happiness. I would like to use my personal experience and also use the Indian context of happiness, because happiness then is different for different cultures. So being in India and being from India, I would like to somehow cover and restrain myself from the definition of happiness with the Indian context. Now, how Mark Twain defined as a land of dreams and romance and land of tigers and elephants. In what way he defined India's tradition and the mystical part of Indian life, and how he defined happiness. So, if you look at it, then there is also something that we have made a lot of progress. Indians, we have made a lot of progress in economic prosperity, healthcare. These areas we have progressed, but what about the social safety networks? This is something that we have not yet addressed, and we need to have more and more of such interactions to ensure that we would be able to create these safety networks. And apart from that, there is also a fact of the India's soft diplomacy and the value-based diplomacy. Now, India's value-based diplomacy, I would really appreciate the fact that the current government from the 2014, with my personal experience that I travel to different countries, how we have used this value-based diplomacy, and what are India's values, what are our cultural strengths, and what is it that has been important to India is its culture. And for a change, and for the first time, we have been now trying to implement and also use this as a soft diplomacy without using power and other military approaches for solutions in different parts of the world. So cultural diplomacy plays a very big role, and that is one of the value-based diplomacy for India. Now, if you look at yoga, and if you look at Ayurveda, and if all these approaches that we have been seeing, and I have been personally experiencing them, with yoga, we have been focusing on diaspora. We have been focusing on the aspects of yoga, and how we have been shaping India's foreign policy, and that has been very important for India's soft policy placement globally. And almost 30 million people in the USA are practicing yoga today, and our Indian embassies are there helping us and to promote yoga. And India's image has been very strong from this point of view. Even though yoga does not involve any kind of military approach, it still is really amazing that we have been able to use this cultural diplomacy and the value-based diplomacy, how we could use this soft-based diplomacy and pursue our interest without the use of military force or any kind of economic sanctions. This is something very, very amazing that we have been able to do it. We must really congratulate and appreciate our foreign policymakers who have been able to do this. And the value-based diplomacy, it has been used as a tool of strengthening relations with various partners and extending reach to outside neighbors. I remember in Switzerland, we were in 2017. We did yoga day on top of the Jungfrau Mountain, where many people from Switzerland were present, and it was a different approach altogether. And yoga was really, really a talk of the town then. So how we are using this and how we are publicizing and how we are strengthening this soft diplomacy to strengthen relations has been very, very important aspect. In other words, we are a very strong soft power. The way we have been using our soft power, very strongly we have used it, and we are evolving, India's cultural diplomacy with this particular act of us. And it all depends how the political class of our country uses these resources to realize their foreign policy and their other issues pertaining to this policy making. Like one of the addresses Modi ji, our Prime Minister, said, we are a land of snake charmers to mouse charmers. You see, the way he approached and he put it across was, how the snake charmers, the mystical image of we being snake charmers, and our superstitions, our mystic beliefs, and all such kind of age-old traditional values, and coming to mouse charmers, where we are now today, the IT geeks. We are trying to run systems technologically. We are here as computer geeks today. We are an IT power, and with a rising middle class, and a youth that can overcome all these kind of challenges that we are looking at. So therefore, hard power is impossible. And how can we pursue? How can we pursue this policy? How can we pursue the value-based policy as a land of spices and as a land of gold? This is something that is we and the youth also needs to be supported and needs to be given all the necessary support on the value-based with webinars and with kind of knowledge-based approaches that we have. And also, when we talk about Ministry of Happiness, there are some states in India that have taken over happiness as a part of their policy making strategy. In places like Madhya Pradesh, we have happiness counseling, we have happiness camps, we have happiness index. So these places are actually using the value-based diplomacy. This is our internal diplomacy, which is value-based and which is being used by our people to support the youth and support various parts of the society. And we have definitely made a lot of progress on the economic prosperity, for that matter. And it's time now for us to see how we can ensure other aspects of soft diplomacy. Now, looking at all the missions that we have, what are the missions and in what way India has been able to place itself? We have understood that the fact that we create mutually beneficial relationships with different countries. We have had policies that are based on common strategic interests. Our common strategic interests are there, and we have been a part of a lot of multilateral organizations. Japan also is a country that we have followed very closely. We work very closely with Japan, and the fact that India is a partner with Japan, it very well illustrates the fact that value-based diplomacy between India and Japan, between India and Israel, there are certain countries that follow the value-based diplomacy, and we are working very closely with them, and they are our allies. And in Japan, if you see, they are following it very closely, and they are looking at creating long-term relationships. Japan places a lot of trust on their diplomacy in integrity and in long-term commitment in making friendships with countries. If they are making friendship with the country to give aid, they are not looking at immediate, repayment, but they're looking at a 20-year relationship. They say that we are going to be profiting with our relationship with this country after 20 years and not immediately. So this is a kind of long-term approach they have, and India is also now falling in line with that approach. We give a lot of credit lines to different countries in a lot of parts of Africa and Latin America and some parts of Pacific, which are not very economically forward. But yes, we have a relationship and we have a commitment for delivering this kind of a value-based diplomacy. And it has yielded a lot of results, and India's leadership positioning has been strengthened by this kind of ecosystem and this kind of mechanisms that have been created. And therefore it is very, very important. It is values are very important to human beings. Values are very important to the societies, and if societies follow these values and uses them to structure and to attain their objectives, culture and values could be a very, very big strength. In our families we have elders, we have a lot of joint families in India. In many ways during COVID we have discovered that a lot of families, a lot of people have been together, and social safety nets have been very stronger. And apparently India did not see as many COVID cases as in Europe or as in the West. I think personally, I felt that it was because of our happiness index and happiness economics, where our priorities are not just on the economic side, but also on the other aspects of the families being together, having a lot of cultural formalities, having rituals, and going through all that. So they have kept us busy, and natural social distancing has been observed in a lot of places, villages and rural networks. So happiness economics has finally received in India its global recognition. And it also implies that the economic indicators such as the gross national product, the per capita income, healthcare facility, employment, wealth, all this should be related with national happiness. And this national happiness index should be structured. There has to be in schools, in colleges, in universities, in networks. Maybe you should have your Rtambhara happiness index. You know, you must create some kind of a happiness index. You must create a series of things people want to do that can bring them happiness, and then create an index. And then Rtambhara could become a standard benchmark for people to tell, well, what is your Rtambhara happiness index? You see, so that is something that would really be a great thing, because the kind of network Rtambhara has and the kind of people and the kind of resources Rtambhara has, they could be evolving with something like this. And in fact, I remember very well in Finland when I was there was this particular startup that I met. So basically, it's really interesting for you to know that they had something called the social service bank account, which means there is a series of processes where you give a certain number of hours every week or every month, and that is recorded in your bank account. You deposit number of hours as a volunteer helping old age home, and then later you reclaim or you withdraw those claims when you get into the old age, which means you deposit your certain number of hours and then you withdraw those certain number of hours in the form of service by others to you. So this is a wonderful chain of service and a social burden, this thing that could be resolved. And things like this, the youth can get into this, and people who want to volunteer actually volunteer and get a certification from an agency that could give them you have worked for X number of hours, and that could come into the deposit record of the social service bank account, and then that would be saved for them to withdraw or maybe to transfer to somebody else to use those hours. So that way a chain of social security could be created, and the social burden to the government could be reduced in a great way, because government's burden on worrying about these things could be reduced. These are the small things that we as citizens could enable. And like everything else, if it is structured, it might give a lot of interest to people to get involved in these kind of activities. I see that a lot of youth now are really happy. School students are looking for opportunities to spend time with old age homes. Students are looking at opportunities to give back something to the society. So if you are able to create a series of processes for them and to support them with some kind of process driven system, they would be really happy. So they would actually be tangible. There could be a tangible effort on their part to spend, let's say, you spend 10 hours a week on doing some work, and they know that we have spent 40 hours, and our bank account, our social service bank account has 40 hours which can be reclaimed. So that also gives them a sense of security, that gives them a sense of some kind of feeling of being good, and a sense of contribution. So they do something for nothing. And if there is some structure that can support this whole ecosystem, it's going to be amazing. And we are working on some things with certain youth organizations to support them, and I proposed to them this, and we are looking at this. So that's how the happiness and the value based diplomacy could play a big role. And India's tradition with non-violence and pluralism, that's one of the biggest the value for us, the soft value diplomacy, which is our non-violence, our pluralism, our diversity, our tolerance, our yoga, our Ayurveda, the Bollywood, classical dances are all well known. But how far are they helping India realize its goals remains subject of investigation. However, the government now is really crafting policy to capitalize on these assets and to realize the goals set for the people of India. Now, soft power in real term, is soft. It does not rely on hard instruments. It does not rely on powers like the military tanks and the missiles and guns. Its influence is really soft, and one can feel it really subtly, so that one feels attracted. We feel attracted to certain kind of music, certain kind of food, certain kind of a feeling that is very got a major difference between soft and hard. So therefore, soft power persuades that we can do the same thing what we wanted to do with hard power without any coercion. We can encompass nearly everything other than economic and military power. And for a country like India that is looking forward to save money and to save money on budgets, it's a very good alternative. One of the easiest ways to achieve our objectives without using economic or military power by investing on those issues. And if we, India, can make this kind of soft power seem legitimate in the eyes of others, it will encounter less resistance to our wishes. We will encounter less resistance. If our culture and ideology is so attractive, others will follow more. They will willingly follow without any coercion. And if we can establish international norms, consistent with our society, it is less likely, that we can change. And if we are able to support institutions, the people of India, if we are able to support institutions and wish to channel our activities, it may be proving very, very helpful for us and for our neighboring countries and also for everybody else in this world. Because the kind of religious policy, religious and the cultural groups that India has, and the way they are able to influence the foreign policy, it is really amazing. Especially epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata are the largest and the biggest valuation of our soft value diplomacy. That is a very big valuation for India, uh, along with Odyssey and our other leaders that are there. So Shakespeare, Kautilya, Machiavelli, you can compare it to them. If you look at that, it can soft diplomacy on the whole can spread happiness, which is a competitive advantage. And it is central to a company's brand. It is central to the foreign policy of a country, central to the state. So therefore, a soft, value-based diplomacy is something that can be played between the countries, with institutions, between educational societies and different states and the cultural aspects that we have. So happiness and value-based diplomacy is something that India is pursuing, and as a society, it is really important for us to put it across and take it forward. So I would like to, I hope my inputs were helpful enough. Thank you so much, Binaji, once again for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much. And it's very interesting because happiness actually transcends all borders. There is nothing, there's nothing that stops. Happiness is the same everywhere.
Right.
And I think you're absolutely right about, the way that we can actually build relations with other
Mm-hmm.
countries and everything through all the, important things that we have. Like, for instance, we have yoga. We have
Mm-hmm.
so much of philosophy here, which is all related, like you said, from the scriptures and everything. There's
Right.
so much good philosophy that actually permeates everything, and it really actually shouldn't be constricted by borders or constricted just to our country. So thank you so much for that. Yeah, it's been very interesting. Yes, we will definitely look at a Rtambhara happiness index in the
Yeah.
future. We'll see what we can do about that.
Yeah.
And have you started any work? I wanted to ask you on this social service bank account, because I do know, I think it's Sweden or one of these Nordic countries that has this bank where you can bank your hours and then get them back when you are older,
Right.
because it is such an issue today. I find that a lot of older people, and even my friends, for instance, all their
Right.
children are abroad, or they are working in different places, and there
Right.
is really nobody to actually look after the older generation.
Right.
Yeah. So, yes. So, I mean, I think that would be an excellent thing to do. Have you started any work on that?
Well, no, Binaji, we did have a group of students whom I advised to work on this because I had already seen this while I was in Stockholm.
Okay.
And again, a startup that was working at the state there is supporting them. However, to go to the government here with something like that would not be very appealing at the moment when it is initiated. So I put in a group of students who are working on this, and the students are working on creating a software. Basically, let's say somebody is in a place like Bihar or MP or out of Karnataka. It's really not possible for us to get that thing into our account. So there has to be a way of how those people what they are doing. They need to give us some documentation and some kind of evidence that can actually help them to record it in their account. So there was a trail run for a month, and it was noticed that a lot of people were not able to get any kind of such documentation. Some people would get it, and many people would say, well, we are just doing it for the satisfaction. We go to an old age home to help somebody, we go to
Correct.
a children's orphanage to help somebody, but it's really not possible for us to ask for a documentary thing. And people don't really give us sometimes people don't want to give anything in writing, especially NGOs with a lot of complications that they have nowadays in India. They think that by giving any such things in writing would get them into trouble or something, because the minute you give something in writing, it becomes like a paid activity. So but then we guided them. We say we are trying to create a standard document which could clearly specifically distinguish a paid service and a voluntary service, and as a social security bank account, social service bank account. We wanted to help them get it registered. So we made an article for them and help them to draft their articles for a trust, which they want to register, and they would do it sometime in the month of January. Because I personally felt it very interested, because the fact that anybody wanting to do something should just be able to declare. There shouldn't be any kind of a compulsive regulation for them to enter. So there has to be just a small undertaking and a kind of a statement or an affidavit that they just say, well, what I'm saying is right. Obviously, this is a kind of activity that anybody wouldn't be wanting to lie to, because end of the day what they are doing is also free of cost, and what they are receiving is also free of cost. So there is no money involved here. You see, so if they are putting in, let's say, 10 hours of work today free of cost, they are expecting to receive the 10 hours free of cost work tomorrow. So it is all got to do with our conscious and our belief systems and our self conscious, basically. So we ask them not to go for any kind of a written documentary evidence, but just a statement online which they would fill up, and they would have a bank account which they would log in, and they would fill in the number of hours. And obviously they would understand that it's like the court of law. You say, मैं जो भी कहूँगा सच कहूँगा, सच के सिवा कुछ नहीं कहूँगा. So that's we have to rely on that basic fact, because it is not a commercial activity for anybody. And there are companies who said that we would support this particular concept, and they had their own interest of getting the data and collecting the data, for which we were not completely in line with, because that's not what we wanted. We also wanted to protect the data privacy. And Google Cloud and in fact Amazon offered to give a lot of space, almost 100 TB of space to run this program if needed. That was a good thing from their side. So a lot of those things, small things here and there, we got it for them, and they are working on this process. And I would be glad to share that with you, and then ask you and invite you and everybody else that wants to have their free bank account with a social service bank account, so that they would at some point retrieve these points, and their deposits they can withdraw at a time that they think is suitable. And it does not have to be now and for a later stage, but it could just be something very depository, very withdraw. So if I am putting in some few hours of work, and next week I want some help, I should be able to ask them.
Right.
So that would be more active, because nobody is going to wait for 5 or 10 years.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. So these are the points that when they started off, we realized these issues. After we collected the data, then we came up with a change and modification of this particular thing. So these were the things that we did, and right now it's being worked on those lines. And yes, it's going to start trial run in the month of January.
Oh, that's amazing. That's very interesting. We'll talk more about this. But does anybody have questions?
Yeah,
You can just unmute yourself and ask.
Yeah, one point, Asif ji. I
Yes.
heard that in the Middle East, I don't know whether it's Dubai or somewhere, they started this campaign on happiness, where the police they go and question the citizen and check out their happiness, how happy they are.
Correct. So this is there in the UAE, the Ministry of Happiness, and the government has created a ministry. They have created a budget of 5 million dirhams every year, and there is a minister that is operating there, and they actually have happiness centers. They have around 8 centers all over Dubai. They have around 4 centers in Sharjah. They have 3 in Abu Dhabi. So these are again voluntary centers being supported by some rich sheikhs of UAE. But the fact is, whether or not they are being used optimally, the fact that UAE has projected itself as a happiness index, and somebody who's wanting to support happiness is quite appreciable. But the fact is that you really need processes to run this. For example, you have happiness counseling camps in Andhra Pradesh, formed by the new Chief Minister Jagan. Then you have happiness index and happiness camps are there in Madhya Pradesh. Orissa also has created something. So therefore, you can't have the government to define the happiness of people or measure their happiness. They must allow a lot of things, like for example, government should invest on art. Government should invest on, people wanting to watch plays, wanting to get together. These are the things that can derive happiness. These are the things that can derive an intellectual, holistic capability in people. So it's very important for us to create how that has to be achieved. Just by saying that, yes, we have a Ministry of Happiness, and then we have something called, it's not going to work, because happiness is not something that you can just get from anybody. You really need people to talk to you. You really need interaction. For example, I visited an old age home last week in Bangalore North, and there were a lot of old ladies, and they have absolutely no activity, and the orphanage is taking good care of them by giving them food, and they got a place to sleep and food and everything, but they have absolutely no activity. And when we spoke to them, they really wanted to do something. So we helped them with some woolen, the needles to, we sent somebody to train them to put sweaters in winter. And they're really enjoying it. You see, they're really enjoying it because they say that, oh, our hands are doing something now. The ladies are between the ages of 60 to 70, and there was absolutely no activity. And the orphanage management thought that it's just enough for them to provide them with food and, comfortable stay. But they were not comfortable at all, because they were somehow feeling very bland, and they just wouldn't want to sit the whole day. And they were not fully educated, so you couldn't even expect things like, attending webinars or something like that. And we proposed that 6 ladies, we sent somebody, and they were offered to learn the woolen knitting, and that was really, really positive, because they really enjoy doing it now, and they're trying to create patterns, and they're trying to create colors and designs. And we have told the management to buy them lots of woolen and just give it to them to see that this is a hobby. So we need to ensure that people are also engaged in happiness. Happiness is not bland. And there is a particular theory, I don't remember, I can't recall the theory, but there is, I think it's called the Easterland paradox. The Easterland paradox, you can Google it and see. It is a decline in happiness when you have a very high level of economic growth. And it is a scientific evidence that, there is decline in happiness if it is there's a high level of economic growth, because then your economic resources are scattered, and you don't have enough time to focus. There are too many things for you to do. So obviously there is a gap in the social safety net, and there is a certain level of gap in a lot of things that you do otherwise. So therefore, even if you look at the religious philosophy, I think in Bible it says the poorer are nearest to God. You see, I mean, I'm not advocating poverty here, but the fact is that, the lesser the things in their life, people are more happy. It's just that less things in life, the power of less. In COVID-19, we realized that a lot of things, people are looking a lot happier because they're spending time with their families, and they are now understanding the value of how the time is being spent with families. They are doing much lesser. They are not going to many malls. They are not going to a lot of places which they used to frequent before. Eating out has been reduced. I mean, I'm not saying that it's a great thing, because I cannot encourage people to sit at home, because we have our friends who run restaurants, we have our friends who own malls. So things like that. But yes, overall philosophy of doing less is something what is keeping people happier, and happiness is an index. Bhutan, for example, is supposed to be the happiest, because if you look at the lives of the Bhutanese people, they don't have anything. They just have food to eat, and they grow vegetables, and they have very little technology. And absolutely, they wake up, they just wake up very early in the morning at 5 a.m. in the morning, but they go to office at 11 in the morning. and they spend just 2-3 hours. They don't think that, they should have lots of offices to work. So things like that in Bhutan, you will realize that the happiness index is really high. I think that's one of the reasons why it is so.
Yeah.
You also-
Actually, our whole economic activity and everything that we do is
Yeah.
finally at the end of it just for happiness, to,
Absolutely.
give us happiness. So yeah, sorry, Prem, you were.
Sorry. No. You brought up an interesting topic about this cultural diplomacy. So every country has its own culture, and you also mentioned very well that everyone looks or goes to the past of how things were to look for happiness,
Right.
recollecting those things. So having different cultures for different countries, so we can't have some sort of a common denominator to uh, come up with some sort of a policy for these kind of happiness index that you talked about. So
Yeah.
how will it differ according to this culture? Because that seems to be the most focal point where people can connect and get into that happiness culture.
No, that's what, Prem. I don't think there is any definition of happiness, for anybody that you can, your benchmark for happiness could be different from mine, and mine could be different from Bina's, and different people have different benches of happiness. Some people, they would love to, have a drink in the evening, and that is happiness for them. They need to have that. And for somebody, walking in the rain, with their beloved, it could be happiness. The different types of happiness are there. However, there is a general feeling of happiness, which is that you have to have things like holistical, the holistical experiences and communication. One of the common factors that they noticed in happiness ministry is communication. Even in Abu Dhabi, even in Finland, they said that communication is the key to a lot of happiness index, and that played around 70% of that is with the communication, different types of communication, and that's where they thought happiness lied, in communicating with people. Because in communication, you don't really have to impose anything, but then you keep communicating without a judgmental, non-judgmental communication. So that was one of the indexes that was ruling.
One more point you mentioned about this old age home where there was no activity. So coupled with culture, keeping people occupied, some activity, it could be anything, pottery making or clay molding or something like that.
Absolutely.
Something which people can start creating with their own hands, making them happier. That's what we have also introduced in our Rtambhara, where we, for our retreat programs, we have this Indian culture. Along with that, we also have all these activities included so that people get a holistic view of happiness.
Absolutely. It's really important, even for children also. You see a lot of children, they have got all those gadgets, and now technology is so much that you don't know, because everything is nothing. They cannot focus. There is so much on the computer. There is so much on Google. You see, it's just not enough for you to, see what you want to do. So you need to have a structured way of learning also, because now learning is there on the Google and on Zoom, but teachers are needed to structure, and they need to really have a way of structuring your knowledge and not just scatter here and there, to focus on the growth of research and development, especially. It really needs to be structured and not just scattered.
Good.
Yeah, I think we need a very concentrated program, because the thing is that now, longevity is increasing,
Yeah.
right? Because we have access to so much medical attention and all of that. So the
Yeah.
longevity is increasing. So people when they retire at 60, there's a
Yeah.
whole lifetime literally ahead of them, and
Absolutely.
we have to, I think, find ways and means to keep them gainfully engaged.
Engaged. Yes.
Yeah.
And this has been one of the reasons for the Japanese longevity with the people. Maximum old age people are in Japan, and
Yeah.
apparently that is because they keep themselves occupied, and their hands are, all the time, involved in some activity where their mental neural networks are active. So
Right.
the blood flow is almost natural, always very normal, and it's regular. So there is a less causes of death in the Japanese society, and that's one of the reasons that they noticed is keeping their hands engaged. And they do that right from a very small age, from the school itself. During skill development and during vocational training, they are kept engaged. So that's one of the main reasons.
Yeah. But don't you think, actually, Dr. Asif, that, I mean, we talk about these blue zones, and these blue zones are in a few places now in the world where people live happier and they live longer, right? But the fact is that they do every single activity themselves. If they're building a fence, They'll do it
Absolutely.
themselves. If
Yes,
they're doing, a bricklaying, they will, lay the bricks themselves. They
very
do
true.
all of these things themselves. But now what we are being taught in education and everything, and with this proliferation of the internet,
Yeah,
people are just glued to their devices.
right. Yes,
Who is
absolutely.
actually learning to work with their hands or to
Yeah.
do things that are actually very important and will hold you in good stead when you're older?
Absolutely, absolutely, very true. Because the way technology has, imposed and dominated over people's lives, it's really true that a lot of people are not even doing much activity. There have
Right,
been less people doing physical activity, and early in the morning, as soon as you wake up, you have a series of WhatsApp messages, and you spend so much
right,
time only to delete those messages. There are
right,
so many messages in the groups that you even to delete you take so much time.
correct.
So, and then it's like a regular routine, the way social behavior has been influenced by technology and by imposing. It's really important that we need to address this. And there must be some, agencies, some kind of stakeholders and ecosystem that can address this. And government really has to come on to this thing to address this issue. Otherwise, there is no, as you said, today, if you don't find a good driver, I mean, if you want a good driver, you need to pay him. You don't find a good plumber, you don't find a good electrician. They are not skilled enough, and they are so substandard and of a low quality. So abroad, the same thing. If you look at it, people are doing their own work. I had, I had a French guest at my home, and there is something that went wrong in my tap, and he started doing it, and we were really feeling embarrassed not to be knowing how to, do a small plumbing job, and he just took over and he did it, and it was done.
That's
So,
true. So I think it starts at the fundamental education level.
absolutely,
Usually.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Vocational training and education level is really important for us.
yeah,
Angel wanted to ask a question.
yeah. Jen,
Thank
please
you,
go ahead.
thank you, Beena ji, for this. It was amazing. I actually happen to live in Dubai and I'm a well-being consultant. And I just wanted to add that, yes, we have our policies in place. And, given the kind of impression the UAE has in the world, it may look like nothing is being done. But honestly, since 2016, the government has put in policies and a lot of these well-being programs. And it's actually trickled down to schools, corporates. They're making sure that everyone is feeling the importance. And given the nature of the population in Dubai and UAE in general, the number of expats we have, they're doing the best to integrate, every culture. And I have to be honest, I'm a true blue Indian and Bombayite, but after having moved here, every time I come back to Bombay, I honestly feel, why is everyone so angry? Like right from the rickshaw wala, the taxi guy, people are just in a hurry, they're angry. And that makes me wonder sometimes that, before we look at these macro things, is everyone doing their small part in finding their values, doing things they love? Are they making time for themselves? I think it really starts there. I just think people are very, very angry. And I may be wrong, but
No,
every
no,
time
you're right. Absolutely right. Angel, you're right. And there are a lot of people, that there is so much of anger, there is so much of impatience, if you see, in the lives of people now. Everybody is so impatient. You can't have a long message. People will have no time to read that. They just want to have a short, quick message. If it's a long message, they just, pretend to read, but they don't actually read. So I think that's what contributes to that. And that's one of the most important factors. Communication is important. People are not communicating now. People are just having the one-way communication with their systems on their phones and trying to look at so many things from different parts of the world and a lot of different things. It's not just one sector. You're looking at a comedy, then you're looking at an anger, then you're looking at a speech, then you're looking at some funny scene, then you're looking at an accident, video. So you don't know. You are seeing so many things, and you can imagine so much of emotions are bottled up, and you really need a medium to take them out and vent them out. So the only way to do that is to communicate, especially the children now with their Zoom call and Zoom education. Parents are not able to monitor what else they are doing on the on their phones, on their systems, and this has to be handled very meticulously and in a very soft way, and something has to be done about it.
I'd like to say something here to you, Kinjal. I think if you see people that are angry, you're seeing people irritated, angry, and all of that. I think a lot has to do with not having enough social interaction.
Right.
And that's a very, very critical one. Because I'll tell you my own experience. I used to travel regularly to Bombay and I used to go in taxis everywhere. And in the taxi, if I sat down and I spoke to the taxi driver, he was the sweetest person ever. But you need to relate to them. Everybody's busy with their own own lives, with their own cell phones, and doing this, and that guy is battling with the traffic. He's obviously going to be very upset, and he's going to be irritated. But the thing is, I think they just need that human contact, the human connect, which we have lost out completely now with our devices again. And I think that is really where the problem stems from. It's major. You talk to anybody, talk nicely to your your sabzi wala, talk nicely to anybody, just give them a few minutes of your time and just see how the whole situation turns around. It's really, and I find that it's only got something to do with the fact that we don't have enough time. We are so busy with our lives, we don't have time to even talk nicely to somebody and relate to them. And that's all they're looking for.
Right.
That's all they want.
That boils down to emotional intelligence, how you communicate and connect with people. So I totally agree.
Yeah.
I recall this movie called Munna Bhai, where the doctor, the Munna Bhai, actually looks at a guy who's sweeping the hospital, and he's never been acknowledged. So all he does is acknowledge him for doing the job, and there's so much of energy exchange there. So we can all repeat those things with our lives, how we don't communicate with people at that level, and to at least just tell them thanks for what they're doing. And then you have a patient, a mental patient who has just been written off as a piece of vegetable or a fruit. And somehow he talks to him and he tries to communicate to him. And this you can notice very well, Binaji, with the dogs. You see, with the dogs, when you speak to them, you can just say anything you want without any fear or without any hesitation, and you can see them listening to you, and you can see that they're receiving your communication without any judgment. And you don't feel like abusing them or telling them anything, but to just vent out anything that you want. I think one of the things that one should do, especially this is done in Finland, there are sessions where people actually talk to dogs. They just sit down and talk to dogs, and they just have communication sessions with dogs where they just keep talking, and the dog keeps, listening to you and accepting you and understanding you. And then you cuddle the dog, and, you just come out with, you just vomit out your, communication. So these are the small things. And I have, personally seen, I have stray dogs outside my house. I don't have time to have some at home, but yes, the stray dogs, I keep looking at them. I actually talk to them. I actually, say hello to them and then give them some biscuits and stuff like that. So you can see that warmth from which they, feel what you're saying to them, even though they can't speak, but the energy, clearly says it so.
There. Absolutely right. Yeah. Is there anybody else who would like to participate and, share their views or ask any questions to Dr. Asif?
Yes.
Can I?
Yes. Please go ahead, Mr. Shetty.
Thank you, Dr. Iqbal. That's a very interesting talk on happiness and value-oriented diplomacy. But I saw in your resume there that you also worked on the gap between industry and academia.
That's right, sir.
So what is the main gap you find now between the industry and the academia now?
So the industry and academia, what we have seen is that students who are here learning, they don't have absolutely any idea that how they can be updated and upgraded to what the industry is doing. And similarly, the industry has no opportunity to interact with the students to tell them what they need and what they have to work upon the R&D. So what we do is, help the students to organize visits to various industries. We organize them to meet the CEOs and spend days with them. We help students to get into the factories to see what is the technology that is there and how they have to, keep up with the technology that is coming up. So in that, what happens, there is a gap that we are bridging between the industry and academia, because for a student, it is a dream to work in any company or industry. But till the time he's studying, whether he spends 3 or 5 years in an institution, he has no touch. He's only looking at it going there after 5 years. But what we do is in the first year itself, we ensure that he visits, a factory or a, clinic or a center of, a police station for that matter. There are people who have never gone to police stations all their lives. So we organize visits to, police stations, cyber security centers. So things which have got nothing to do in their daily lives, so that they get a clue of what is happening in the society. And society comprises of many things. It is not just one thing. For an engineer, a society could just be an engineering lab or an engineering laboratory or a factory. But for, there is also a hospital, there is also a social service center, there's an orphanage, there is an agriculture farm. There are so many things that a person needs to look at. So industry academia approach is something where we are working on those lines, and we are trying to bring them closer together. We are adapting a model. We visited Israel, and I noticed that all the campuses there are industry academia, enabled. So which means an institution operates very close to a factory, like the Microsoft Research Center in Haifa, Israel, has the University of Ben Gurion within that same campus. So there is a very frequent interaction between the industry and academia, and student every day in the evening gets to spend 2 hours in the industry to understand what they are doing and how they can upgrade and update themselves of what they're actually studying. So that's one of the aspects of our industry academia approach, sir.
That's a very good work you are doing. I think that's really needed now.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Yes, please.
I like to make a comment and observation. I live in Canada, by the way, it's snowing behind me.
Okay.
The main thing I think India can contribute along this line is to have some kind of a basic spiritual education for children onwards.
Yes.
Something that will make them happy, just being themselves, happy by doing something for no rewards.
Right.
Some basic kind of thing, something, the joy of that, and make them ultimately realize that the happiness is within us, and material things will give us happiness, but only transient. We get dependent on it. It's an addictive thing sometimes. So if we can, and India being it's the only country in the world that can contribute so well, because we are still not that civilized, or kind of westernized, whatever way you put it, but not materialized, at least not that materialistic, in many ways, at least not in the villages.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Natwani. Actually, you brought up something which is what actually Rtambhara Wellness wants to do. And we have already started with that, which is trying to bring this kind of teaching into education for young students, to make them understand what happiness is all about. And we are actually, that has really been one of our core tenets in Rtambhara Wellness, is how to actually get this knowledge into schools and colleges. And that's where we are at also. So this part is also a critical part. Apart from the corporates and individual wellness thing, we're looking at education in a very big way. So thank you so much for reinforcing that. And we are definitely going to make a strong push for that.
Absolutely. And another thing that I spoke with the Rtambhara team on day one was that, this is important what you're saying, and that needs to be really structured in a manner of, with a module. Let's say 10-hour module or 20-hour, 30-hour module, where there is a syllabus, there is an activity related with that syllabus, then there is some kind of a physical, report that is done. So what happens is there is a sense of structuring of happiness in the minds of students. So they understand, okay, this is what I have achieved today. This is the kind of happiness, and there are marks given to him. Out of 10, you give him 4, 5, 8, whatever. But he gets to understand that, that this is what happiness is all about, and this is the happiness exercise I have done. Spending time with people whose needs are there is the biggest form of happiness. Communicating with people, going and visiting. We don't have the privilege today to live in joint families. And Indian culture in the initial days had those joint families where there are a lot of people involved, there are a lot of elders, a lot of cultural rituals involved, and things were being done together. So each would support another. So those things were there, and today it's missing because of nuclear families, and majority of them don't have access to those kind of interaction. And in fact, I attended one of the guys who wrote a book on divorces, and he was saying that in the olden days, divorce was very little, because a woman had more than 4 husbands, in the sense that one was a husband for physical needs. The father-in-law used to always fulfill the psychological needs, by talking, by speaking, and a devar would always serve the needs of support, help, and things like that. And similarly, those needs were being served, and somehow there were less divorces in those olden days. And now the husband has to provide everything, and so they don't.
And he's found wanting. That's very interesting. Thank you. Okay, Ramchandran ji, you've put something on the chat. Maybe you can just come, unmute yourself and just talk to Dr. Asif on it.
No,
Ramchandran? Yes, there you are.
The point you said, the communication is very important.
Yeah.
And to just relate to my experience today, I was in the operation table for an eye operation. And this is the second time. And the first time I remembered the doctor, her history, and the assistant also. Moment entered the operation table, I addressed them by name, and they're surprised. And then I greeted the doctor, and even while she was doing the eye operation, I was just, talking to her, and then whole atmosphere was not serious. It was, everyone felt happy. I just want to share that.
Yeah, no, that's very beautiful. And I hope you get well really fast. I hope you're...
No, if the wellness in mind, I think the cure will happen automatically.
Yes, with the happiness. Absolutely.
And they say most of 98% of the illnesses are psychosomatic, which actually originate from the mind, and they don't really. So things like this, I mean, I'm sure that he will heal faster, at least 50% faster than he would normally heal with his eye operation, because of this kind of positive, aspect of communicating with people and being in touch and doing all this.
And
Thank you,
absolutely. And the doctor also, a happy doctor will do a better operation. That's for sure.
No, the doctor hit the point on communication. It's really, really important. That's what
I
triggered my thought to share.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else would like to share? We are at 8 o'clock now, and we should be closing unless anybody has a last, idea to share or anything to ask. Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. I will call Prem, our director, IT and social media, Mr. Prem, to give you the formal vote of thanks, after which I'll just close the meeting.
Yeah.
Prem?
Yeah, thank you, Binaji. On behalf of Rtambhara, Asifji, really a pleasure having you talk in this forum and sharing your interesting ideas about happiness and the value-oriented or value-based diplomacy. There's been quite a lot of interactive topics discussed, and it was really very, very interesting. And on behalf of Rtambhara, I thank all the other participants for joining in, and especially for you to take your time to be with us and share your wonderful thoughts. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Binaji.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Asif. We really enjoyed this very interactive session.
We look forward to many more, Binaji.
Yes, please. We'd love to have you on our platform again.
Definitely.
So for all the others, please join us for our 2 upcoming programs. On Sunday, 6th December, we have yoga program by Umesh Dagatji as usual. And on Friday, 11th December, we have a special program by Mr. Harsh Vardhan Umre. He's also one of our members at Rtambhara. He's going to talk on human wellness, the environmental connect. And the details will be posted on the WhatsApp groups. Please block your dates for the upcoming webinars. And we look forward to your presence every Friday, where we have topics, very interesting topics and very knowledgeable speakers. Thank you once again for your presence and participation today from all of us.
Binaji, I have a point. Binaji.
Yes.
Ma'am, I have a point to share.
Yes.
My name is Shekhar Vijayan, and I know Asif ji quite well. And I was listening to the entire discussion.
Right.
And I also believe, ma'am, we are obviously encountering COVID-19. Right. And a lot of people look at COVID-19 and say, oh my God, we have, the heaven has fallen on us and hell has broken loose in more ways than one. But I also believe it's a silver lining in the cloud for all of us, because it has also made the boundaries smaller. It also made us realize the value of relationships. It has also made us realize that gratitude is the best attitude, because we are all lucky, we are all fortunate that we are able to talk on a medium like this, irrespective of wherever we are. We could be in US, we could be in India, we could be in Sri Lanka, we could be in any part of the world. But the point here is, I think happiness is also a state of mind. Now for me, being happy is looking at my dog, who I feel has got the most beautiful eyes in the world. And I'm sure she also thinks I've got the most beautiful eyes in the world. She's a golden retriever. So for me, that is happiness. But I think on a larger point, ma'am, I think happiness is how we look at things and how we understand that because of COVID-19, I think it's made the world a smaller and a more inclusive place. I think earlier, the world was very exclusive. Everybody wanted to be exclusive. Everybody was a brand. Right now, everybody's become inclusive. We are moving towards inner consciousness. And that's where all the focus is going to be on India. Because India is where all the knowledge is. India is where all the focus is. And as I say, on Asif ji, the spotlight is there. So it goes without saying.
Yeah. No, thank you. And you're absolutely right. I think India, in a sense, if you actually gauge the happiness level of everybody in during the COVID, I think you would find that India comes somewhere on the top, because
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So we've actually been able to handle it quite well.
Ma'am,
So thank you
especially
so
in this
much for
group,
that, Shekhar.
everybody's happy.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am.
All right. Okay. So we look forward to seeing you again next Friday. So thank you from all of us at Rtambhara. Namaste.
Thank you.